Hello, music lovers. Welcome back. Judging from the comments of the How to Finish a Loop video, it appears a few of you have seen the benefits of a fast workflow. And you have been begging me, or even bullying me, for some of those rack effects I have made. Now, seeing as you wonderful lot have gotten me to 15,000 subscribers, I'd say you'd earned it, no problem. Now, before I hand them over, I need to explain to you why they exist, because some are not exactly what they seem. So let me show you what they're all about. Let's go. Okay, so before we get to the racks themselves, I need to quickly show you the problem I was trying to solve so that you can understand why these racks behave like they do. Because my workflow speed isn't just down to the fact that I have these racks. The racks are a solution to a bigger problem. And to solve that problem, I had to change a fundamental way that I make music. Now, that way is different to how most people work and how most people are taught. And it all comes back to these things. Whether or not you are familiar with using a mixing desk, believe it or not, the DAW you are using right now is still directly influenced by the way these things work. Okay, so what I'm specifically referring to is insert effects versus send effects. For those of you not familiar with the difference, let me give you a quick rundown. An insert effect goes directly on the channel, like this EQ, for example. That goes on our piano here. So if you think about the signal chain, we start with our sound, our piano, then it is inserted into the signal chain between the piano and the output. Now, a send effect is different. It essentially siphons off a portion of your signal in parallel and then sends it somewhere else, typically to an effect like a reverb. That reverb will be sat on its own channel, as you can see over here. These are usually called a return channel. And I can send some of my piano over there. So now we have two signals. This channel over here is just reverb. And our original piano, what we call the dry signal, is over here. So that's the difference between insert and send. So most people are taught to set up a track in this way, where we have some effects on return channels and various elements of their mix are all being sent to those few effects. So here is a classic example. I can use the same reverb we have on our piano and send our clap to that too. Back in the days where you had one reverb and it might cost you several £1,000s or dollars, that makes a lot of sense. Not very practical to insert one of those on every channel, I'm sure. Okay, so with that out of the way, let me show you why I needed the rack system. You see, one of my favorite features of Ableton is the ability to look inside your other sessions, like this. You can see all of the tracks from that session, and if you want, instantly drag in any of the sounds you like from that session. For example, if I wanted to add the trance lead from the video the other week where we finished the loop, I can just bring that in. Let me mute that vocal. Here it is. Let me just put that in the right key. Fantastic. Now we have the lead and its sound in our new track. I didn't have to go back to the old session and save the preset or anything like that. Any automation also comes with it. However, if you do recall that video, you may notice something amiss with this sound. What I've done here is simulated what would have happened if I was using send effects like a normal person. None of the reverbs, delays, choruses, anything I would use as sends have come across with the sound. Now it does copy send levels, but if the effects used in each session were different anyway, I'm not going to get the same sound back. And oftentimes those effects are crucial to the sound. So that is why I developed the rack system the way I did. Let me grab the reverb. So all that is going on inside of these racks is that we basically have a volume fader and then our effect. So the volume, that is placed before the effect. So that is acting like our send. And running parallel to that is the original dry signal. So it's basically a kind of insertable send effect. Now, when it comes to things like delay and reverb, we want it to behave like a send effect, not an insert, because those two things are actually very different. Let me show you what happens when you normally insert a reverb. If we use this reverb as an insert, the traditional way, we have to use this wet-dry mix parameter to blend between our original sound and the effect. Now the problem that creates is I can no longer send into this reverb so that it carries on when I stop sending. This is now acting like the output fader on the return channel, not the send on the way in. Whereas if I show you what happens with a real send, let me turn the time up to make it obvious. I can remove the send and the reverb tail carries on. And this is great for situations like with a vocal, where if you just want to echo or reverberate one word. So as you can see, an inserted reverb or delay wouldn't be able to just echo one word because the effect would stop as soon as you turn it back down. Quick example with delay. Let me turn these repeats up. You can hear the echoes carry on after I've stopped sending. But this is what I was doing with the reverb automation on the bass in the loop video. So as you can see, I can bring in sound from other sessions now, and all of the sound comes with the track, including the effects and all the automation. Okie dokie, let me give you a quick tour. Starting with the delay and the reverb, sendable inserts. These are the reworked 15K Celebration Edition. Thank you very much, by the way. So here's the delay. We have our send. Time is the delay timing. Repeats is the number of repeats. Ping pong mode pans the repeats left to right. Put width below that. That controls the total width for the ping pong repeats, just in case you still want stereo but not as distracting as full left and right. Mod is short for modulation, basically introducing a little bit of pitch variation, which can stop it phasing with the original sound and distinguish itself a little bit. And here we have a filter control. Basically reduces the lows and highs in the repeated signal. And then you can choose the center of that filter with this frequency knob here. So for example, one way to liven up a sound is to use very quick repeats in only the high frequencies, have them ping left and right as if they were bouncing off the walls of a very bright room. Okay, that's the delay. Now let's look at the reverb. Again, here is the send. We have time for total length. Again, control over the stereo image, just in case you don't want it completely wide. Always useful if it's not a front element of your track. Pre-delay is basically a little delay before the reverb starts. Comes in handy when you want to bring the main sound forward but still have the reverb ambience in the background. Now, quality is an interesting one. Let me turn the time up so we can hear this more obviously. You can think of quality as like a realism dial. In the higher values, it's a lot more lush. Whereas in the lower values, there's a lot more trash. This is going to be a deceptively useful tool for you. Don't be afraid to play with lower quality reverb. They can be a lot more exciting than the realistic counterpart, especially in dance music and especially in the context of a mix. Here we have some tone controls, some EQ. We have a warmth. This dial is for presence. You can have more or less of that. And the ever useful high pass and low pass filters. Making sure to keep those highs and lows in check. A great way of keeping the mix tidy and also stopping the reverb from overwhelming the original sound. Now this is something I wish more reverbs had. This smooth parameter. Sometimes when you're trying to add reverb to a really transient sound, like a drum or percussion or some synth stabs, the attack can make the reverb rattle in a really nasty way. So what smooth does is introduces a de-esser into the input signal. So that means the transients don't make it through to the reverb. And it stops that brittle sounding, distracting bounce that you sometimes find with other reverbs. So if something is annoying you in the high frequencies, you can play with that or the low pass filter. So that's the delay and the reverb. I've also included a smudger. Let me show you what that's for. Basically, the smudger is for smudging your mixes. You can use it for build-ups on individual sounds or the full mix if you want. Like that. A nice quick way to build or transition. It's basically a high pass filter into a reverb. This dial chooses how high you want the filter to go. This is the total level of the smudged signal, so you can fine tune the volume. Dial is called demud. If you think the smudge signal sounds too muddy, you can compensate with this a little bit. Take some of the low mids out and compensates with some high mids. last but not least, this is the ability to leave the tail running after the smudge has ended, so it acts more like a send reverb. Also in the folder, you'll find my filter, just a low pass and a high pass filter, ready to go with a built-in limiter, and also my stereo faker, which is just a copy of the Voxengo plugin, but with easy to use parameters. Right then, I hope you enjoy those. Even if you don't, I hope you learned something. If you do, you know what to do. Press some buttons that help me out. If you feel so inclined, you can buy me a coffee from the link in the description. And until next week, I'll see you in the comments. Bye-bye.